taking an old broken process and just adding AI to it is not going to solve any problems. It's literally pouring fuel on the fire.
We just found out the foundation models are achieving what we're calling a B- accountant, which is the accuracy is around 79%. The capability is there, and I think the next phase is going to be about cost. It's like Uber rides used to be $6, right? And then suddenly 37, and you're like, whoa, this is a real taxation now.
There's another thread I keep hearing about is change management issues. While they're being told machines are going to take over and all these layoffs are going to happen, they're fearful for their jobs.
It's a shift in mindset. You can spend all the money in the world. Change management doesn't end the day that you go live with something. It starts the day you go live with something. Making these investments and 2 years down the road, you're like, we spent all this money and nobody's using it. This is an opportunity for smaller firms to be able to compete. Smaller firms leveraging AI can maybe hit above their normal level. So it's going to completely change the competitive landscape when you can go up market or down market, depending on where you are.
It's an equalizer for sure.
Absolutely.
Welcome back to AI Native Accounting Podcast. My name is Kacee Johnson. I am your host and the executive director of the foundation. And today's episode is very special because I have my co-founder, Bebe Kim, as a co-host for today's episode, and one of our advisory council members, Barry Brown. It is so great to have you guys here. For the audience, we literally just walked off the keynote stage at Scaling New Heights and ran over here to record a podcast. We were honored by Joe Woodard, another advisory council member, to come here at the conference to give out our awards for the 2026 inaugural awards, actually, for AI strategy and governance, implementation, and innovation. So we are going to get into who those winners are and talk a little bit more about that. But thank you so much for your time and your service on the Advisory Council. How about you tell the audience a little bit about yourself, your background, and what you're doing these days?
So I'm Barry Brown. For almost 30 years, I was the CIO and COO of a top 200 firm and left last September to start EBITDA Advisors and working with as a fractional CIO with firms all across the country. I love it. It's we were talking this morning. It's been a change of pace. Being instead of working with one firm every day, working with a bunch of firms, and it's a lot of juggling involved, but I'm definitely enjoying it.
This is the first time being introduced on the podcast, but she is instrumental. I couldn't do this without her. She's always in the background. Why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Bebe Kim. I'm a lawyer by trade. Started a couple companies. And currently, my other job is I lead go-to-market at Digits. And been working with Kacee extensively. We only started the foundation in February, which is insane because everyone assumed we've been around for longer. And before the foundation even took shape, we started this podcast together, which is to really talk about what is real in AI and cut through all the hype.
And that's what these awards are doing, is recognizing real progress and not innovation theater. Barry, you have been recognized throughout the years for your achievements. And I'm just curious, through this awards process, what has it been like being on the other side?
Well, it's definitely been different. Normally, I'm going in and looking at firms and saying, hey, what can we do to get you where you want to go? Being on the advisory council and actually judging on the awards, it's looking at what people are actually doing, and that's really the difference. Is there are firms out there that are already innovating and already doing the things that we've been talking about.
And maybe talk a little bit about the diversity in the nominations that we saw, because we really did see them from all sizes of firms and the different approaches. What surprised you?
I think when we got started, we really didn't know what we were going to see. And, we saw nominations from Big 10 firms and we saw nominations from sole practitioners. And so it's the entire gambit of the profession. And we're seeing the successful implementation across all of those. You don't have to have a multi $1 budget. You can do it as a sole practitioner.
And we are going to dive deeper into those specific winners and why they were chosen by the Advisory Council. Maybe why don't you share a little bit about what comes next?
Yeah, so if you've been on the ground or following Scaling New Heights, the number one theme is governance. So as Barry just highlighted, AI is very accessible to everyone. However, the governance of it needs to be thoughtful because that is the human element of how we use these tools. And so that has been the cornerstone of our awards. We recognize two governance winners. One is CBiz, which is, the public accounting firm on the market, and they rolled out a very comprehensive framework across the firm. Their AI adoption has already crossed 1 million prompts internally. It's very successful implementation. And on the other side of the market is Tim Sarnett from Financial Optics. It's a 3-person firm who was equally thoughtful about rolling out AI and really bringing his team and his employees along the journey of AI adoption and exploring what that means. So that's been really, really successful.
So those were our two. Obviously, the mission at the foundation is to enable responsible AI implementation. So those two awards are very near and dear to my heart for sure. And I want to get into governance and strategy a bit more. But the other two winners, we had another firm winner on AI implementation, and that was Armanino. They were going to dive a lot deeper in their case study as well as in their podcast interview, but they built their own solution called Requirements Miner, and it's been incredibly successful. So they won for AI implementation. We also had an individual award winner, a single one this year, Angel Zen, and he won for AI innovation. And he's a solo practitioner, has over 300 clients, and somehow still manages to take 12 weeks off a year, which I need to figure that part out. So it was incredible to see the varying degrees of AI use, but also varying sizes.
Well, I think that just underscores the fact that you don't have to be a top 20 firm to do it. A sole practitioner can successfully utilize the technology in a very deliberate way and get amazing results.
Let's dive into that a bit more, because last night after dinner, I was talking with Lisa Griffiths. She's the CEO of Vega. Hi, Lisa. And she shared with me she was at Engage and she attended your session that Jim Bork was moderating, and there were a few other CIOs on the panel. And she said it was the best session of the entire conference. She was raving about it. And I said, tell me more. Why was it so great? And she said, because it was totally opposite of hype. It just dove into governance, into strategy, and into data. Can you share some of the top insights from that?
Well, that's the, it feels, you go to these conferences and you sit in sessions and all you hear about is the wonders that is AI and everything that's going to happen. And inevitably it takes people like me and my to kind of, sober it down and say, look, we've got to do it responsibly. We got to do it securely. We've got to be deliberate. Just to do it fast is not good. Deliberate, measured is good. And so I think that was the big point. Data governance, I get calls almost every day from firms, hey, we need AI, but they don't understand exactly what that means. And so, in order, there is a process to get to successful AI. One of the key fundamentals of what this profession is about security. And so protecting our clients' data is imperative. We can't go out and just upload tax returns to ChatGPT because, it's going to be faster. So doing it, being very deliberate about it and doing it securely is what's paramount. And that was the big message driving that we drove home last week at Engage is don't just do it to do it, but do it deliberately. For most firms outside the top 50, you're probably going to rely on vendors a lot to do that, but lean on them to do it. You've got to learn the questions to ask to make sure that you're doing the due diligence that you need to do. But that's where everybody working together can be successful with it.
And what about if you're using a vendor and they roll out AI and you don't really know, but you're using it do you have to go back through that due diligence
Well-
you would normally do on a new vendor?
One of the driving points that we made last week was about process improvement. Taking an old broken process and just adding AI to it is not going to solve any problems.
Just have a faster broken process.
It's literally pouring fuel on the fire. And so I think that's, again, these are the things that aren't as fun to talk about. Everybody just wants to talk about, how AI changes the profession. But, for every firm, that implementation is going to be different. And, those processes don't just go out and start using AI. You need to have a foundational knowledge, but ultimately looking at your firm, looking at what you're doing, how can you improve that first? Then looking at how the technology can actually be applied to making those improvements.
So Barry, not every firm has the resources to hire even a fractional CIO, of course. So in a small firm, who do you think is suitable to sort of, lead the experimentation?
I think for every firm, ultimately, if you have more than one person, one person needs to ultimately be in charge. It's imperative that the buck stops here. There's always has to be some person that ultimately is responsible for it, whether you've got thousands of employees or you've got 3 employees. So I think that's the most important thing, is to have a champion that is going to ultimately be responsible for it. Getting a good level of knowledge, and it's not complicated. It's not hard. When this all first started really coming out 2 or 3 years ago, I didn't go back to college. I went to YouTube. And that, I stressed that at a conference a couple of weeks ago. If you're hearing all these sessions, you're going to all these conferences, you're hearing about AI, and you really don't know where to get started, go to Jason Statt's YouTube page. And, I learned a lot just from watching
educational,
that.
entertaining.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, and to your point too, Bebe, on small firms, and I'm curious what you guys see when people come to you, and maybe, because I guess a big topic of the session was also data, and we hear over and over, garbage in, garbage out, and everybody is like, we need AI, but they're not thinking through all these layers. But I'm curious, Bebe, when you guys see, whether it's a small firm or a big firm, they maybe don't have the cleanest data, what are your recommendations, or how do you handle that to support?
To support their
their
data
kind of move.
journey. Yeah. So I think when a firm, just one thing is that there's a lot of wrappers around AI right now, and it's really hard to tell like what the vendors are actually using underneath, right? And so if you see a vendor who's really fast to market, they're probably using OpenAI and Claude behind the scenes, but then with improved security and whatnot. And what I think firms don't also realize is that these foundational models are basically LLM or generative in nature and not necessarily deterministic by core. I come from a legal background, so this sort of LLM technology is a much more natural fit for legal, for example. It's like a text in, text out sort of workflow, right? Whereas applied to accounting, the AI needs to modify significantly with controls, with rules, with deterministic design in order to make it work really well for the firms. I think that's one of the key, insights that people don't really realize.
Well, and I want to throw in that AI is an extremely generic term.
Yeah.
You mentioned LLMs. I mean, that's kind of the entry level, and then you have agentic AI on the far end. And a lot of vendors, every vendor might be using AI. Again, at Engage last week, this week at Scaling New Heights. I don't know a vendor yet that doesn't have something AI.
Right.
But what that means is it can be wildly different. And so, to your point about data governance, it's imperative. I'm working with a firm right now that their entire data structure is stored in a traditional accounting system that's completely inaccessible. And I was like, well, look, you can't do anything with AI with your data until we get that data out of that system. So there is it's going to be a process. It's not something that you can come in. It's not something you can throw money at. I mean, at the end of the day, September 15th, October 15th is still coming. There's things that have to be done, in the normal course of the profession. that's going to, so this is not going to happen overnight. It's going to be a process for some firms that have these legacy systems to get their data out to where they can actually fully utilize the capabilities that are coming out.
Right.
So any recommendations from either of you on where do they start? Because some of this can sound a bit overwhelming. And what I hear over and over is they already feel overwhelmed by news and press releases and in their, social scrolls and going to a conference like this. I mean, every session I've been to has talked about AI. So they already feel overwhelmed and then they hear that about their data. Where do you recommend that they even begin?
Yeah, I think we just mentioned designating a responsible person at the firm to own this process. And that includes carving out time for experimentation. Like, is it important to your firm to experiment this year? If so, that takes time, right? And the willingness to use maybe your own firm's books because you don't have client data issues. You fully own your own data and you can really test on your own books. And then the second is just like being educated about AI, fundamentally knowing the different types, LLM, agentic, deterministic, the list goes on, and knowing what applies, what doesn't apply, but also to find a tangible workflow. It's like, do I want to solve reconciliation? Do I want to solve the receipts problem, like client chasing, whatever it is? Once you pick that one workflow, it's easy to understand the goal of your experimentation.
She stole all my best answers. I should have spoken first, but I'll finish. I'll pick up that last point.
Yeah.
About workflows. Find a small problem. Don't look at how can we use AI. Don't think of what's the biggest problem we have, client intake, as an example, and find a solution for that.
Yeah.
So break it down to small pieces. In my 30 years, I would never buy anything without running a proof of concept, a trial, if you will. So start small, find something small, look for an implementation to fix that one problem, and then run it, and then build on that success going forward.
Yeah, and I actually think the foundation models, especially Claude Code, Cowork, is really great place for prototyping. And you can very quickly spin up custom software to test whether this is an important solution to solve and is it repeatable, right? Once it is, then you'll realize that, hey, to actually make it a secure, repeatable workflow takes more engineering. And that's where the vendors can come in. You can say, like, okay, who has this workflow and who can execute it, help me execute it month after month, quarter after quarter.
So conference season is in full swing.
Yeah.
We're all here in Orlando, but I know people have been at BDO and Engage. I was at the Blackward's recent launch event in New York. What else is top of mind and that you're hearing as big common threads, whether it's about excitement around opportunities or challenges? What are the other threads you guys are hearing?
Well, the biggest thing for me this year is, as opposed to the last probably couple of years, there's been a lot of conversation about, it's going to change the profession and it's coming and all that. Well, this is the first year, and I think the awards indicate that, is this actually here. There are firms, there are still plenty of firms that are not in the cloud, are not, don't have accessible data, but we're starting to see those early adopters really, really rise to the top and getting the success stories like the award winner today that are actually going ahead and doing it and getting it done.
There's still firms not in the cloud.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
QuickBooks Desktop is still alive.
It is. And,
on local files.
But I get it. Accountants don't like change. We're famous for it.
Yes.
I commented last week when I started, we were using the green ledger sheets and, then laptops and the internet and Excel and now AI. So it's a natural evolution, but not everyone, is going to be on the cutting edge and not everyone needs to be on the cutting edge.
Yeah, we're still in the early prototyping phase generally. And I think we just found out that, the foundation models are achieving what we're calling a B- accountant, which is the accuracy is around 79% if you just throw your financial transactions into a foundation model. Capability is there. And I think the next phase is going to be about cost, right? Because these tokens, they're not charging us what they're costing them to do that right now. And we've been hearing around the conferences this notion of just like, oh my God, how much is it going to cost when that comes out? It's like Uber rides used to be $6, right? And it's suddenly 37, and you're like, whoa, this is a real taxi now. So,
and how do you budget for that?
How do you budget for
such a big line item? Okay, so let's talk about that a bit, because it's BS what people are saying about ROI. There's no way, we don't even know how to really calculate or track this at this point. I talk to smaller firms and they're like, well, it's not that big of an investment at our size, so we're not as concerned about tracking it. It would take us more time to track it. That's a distraction. We know it's worth it. So what are you guys seeing, hearing about cost and ROI?
Yeah, I mean, that Microsoft story where they blew their AI budget in 4 months and didn't raise the cap, right? So I think it is distinctly more problematic for large companies, because when you roll it out, employees can access it and do a lot of things that cost a lot of tokens, but it may be like, how do I post this tweet? And it's like, that just cost me $6. Was it worth that, right? And so just thinking through these questions is really interesting. They do publish cost data. It's just not completely tied to the GL yet. And we'll see that evolution happening as well.
Yeah, and there are ways to minimize that to a degree. I mean, yes, it's obviously going to cost, but ultimately it's an investment. I sound like a salesman, but I've commented that I think the commoditization of compliance, I think, and it just kind of underscores the shift in the profession, where all the advantage or all the growth is in advisory. So, hey, we'll sign you to a 12-month tax advisory contract and we're going to do your return for free. That is only going to get done with the help of AI from a cost perspective. And I think that underscores the investment. Are you going to be able to look at lines on a financial statement and pick that cost out? Probably not. But if you don't do it, all your competitors down the street are.
Sure.
Yeah, it's like, with the freed up capacity, what do you do with it? That's your ROI.
Absolutely. And I heard that for years in partner meetings.
Yeah.
If we could only hire more people, we could go out and generate this much more revenue. Well, here's your opportunity.
Right.
And it's just important when you get that freed up time that you're strategic with what you do with that time and not just throw more of the same compliance stuff.
One of the largest benefits of larger firms versus smaller firms is the ability to work across the different service offerings. This is an opportunity for smaller firms to be able to compete. We're seeing, we had several conversations at Engage last week about the larger firms, because of the leveraging of AI, can go down market. Mm-hmm. Well, that works the other way as well. Smaller firms leveraging AI can maybe hit above their normal level. So it's going to completely change the competitive landscape when you can go up market or down market, depending on where you are.
It's an equalizer for sure.
Absolutely.
Now, Barry, you touched on something just talking about in our nature in this profession, not liking change, and that's for humans of all industries. But that was another thread I keep hearing about is change management issues. And in my humble opinion, I think part of the problem is that we aren't having enough of the conversations in advance with our teams, and we need to be over communicating. They lack trust in, first of all, they're being told machines are going to take over and all these layoffs are going to happen. So why would they want to lean into that, right? They're fearful for their jobs. But also we're saying, oh, look at this AI. It gives you this output, but we're not showing them how it got to the output. And we're telling them we're a profession built on trust this machine, but we're not showing you they don't have the context, but just let it do it. But you're going to be in charge of reviewing it and you're responsible for making sure it's right. So I think that needs to come before we just push AI down their throat and move straight to training. Like there's a step there that's missing.
Well, I think that that is a change that I think we're seeing across the board, where it's a shift in mindset. So to your point about change management, you can spend all the money in the world. Change management doesn't end the day that you go live with something. It starts the day you go live with something. Making these investments, and 2 years down the road, you're like, we spent all this money and nobody's using it. So I think that that's so important, that you continue that training. But the cost of doing that is important.
Yeah, we at this point, I think firm owners are very bought into AI for obvious reasons, and it's the second part of that. It's like, how do you bring your team along? Here's some what not to do. We see this on our sales team, where people come to our demos, and it's the firm owner and their staff accountants who had no context why they're even here. And it's just like, hey, look at this tool, right? And the staff accountants, you can just feel the tension. They're like, oh my God, like what is going to happen to my job? And we feel awkward because we're like, okay, how do we do this demo where we talk about this, right? And so that is something that I think requires just more thought. Ran into Tim Sarnett, which is one of our winners, and he thoughtfully sat down with his team, addressed some of their common questions. Just like, are you going to make me take on more work, right? Am I going to be replaced? Like, what is the vision for my career? And what is my role here moving forward vis-a-vis these tools? And just even creating space to address these concerns is the first step in bringing the people who are at work who are actually working in these tools with you. Another example is we had a pilot with CLA, one of the largest CAS practices in the world, and they are so staff accountant. They really invest in their people, and so one of the criteria for us passing the pilot was a NPS score of, do you like using digits? Would you like to use digits? And we got the scores back, and we discussed it, and we couldn't move forward until the team liked the tool. That was very thoughtful.
So I want to pivot a little bit. We talked about the awards, and Barry, you were right there for the whole process, but in tandem of that, we were also building out the framework for our new scholarship program. So I'm excited to share with you guys and announce that we are launching as of today. Applications should be live on the website. We now have our official scholarship program open. We will be awarding 2 $5,000 scholarships. You need to be a U.S.-based student enrolled in the 2026 to 2027 calendar year. This is a little bit different than a normal scholarship program in that we are asking each applicant to actually build an AI tool, a working use case, and explain it, as well as what the impact would be on their future role as they move on in their career.
Very hands-on.
Yes, very hands-on. So, Barry, what does this tell us about the pipeline is kind of changing and evolving to, where the advisory council said, you know what, these students are using AI. We want to see how they're thinking about things differently and what they can build.
A dramatic shift. I mean, I know when I was in school, the idea of, hey, go do an audit. I mean, you wouldn't. It's inconceivable. And so what we're asking is for students to change a mindset and think about a problem and how to come up with a solution for that problem. I think it's going to greatly prepare them, when they graduate and come into the market. These are going to be the next round of leaders that are going to be able to take up that adoption and really drive the profession forward.
I think the format's really interesting as well. We have we talked to many people with high school kids, age kids, and the deliverable is increasingly not just an essay or a submission, because we all know that could be severely AI assisted, right? So just more and more like video interviews and talking through your thought process. So really look forward to those submissions.
Absolutely. And I'm curious for both of you, I saw the announcement today that AICPA gave the good news that undergrad enrollments in accounting went up 9%. So that's
Yay,
something to
3
celebrate.
years in a row.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's something to celebrate.
Yes.
But I still do think that the roles that those kids will be coming out of college and working in 4, 5, 6 years are incredibly different than what maybe they are today. What are your thoughts there? What do you see as a future new grad accounting role to a firm?
I think it's going to be dramatically different. There will always be a place and a need in the profession for an experienced 20-year tax partner. But you can't get to a 20-year tax partner without having a 15-year senior and a 10-year manager and staff and all of that. So there's always going to be a need, but I think the need for what they're trained on is what's really changing. The days of just learning the traditional, Excel and audit and tax are shifting, and this award is going to underscore the value of that and what it's going to do to the profession.
There's often this talk of the pyramid becoming more of a diamond shape and how that affects entry-level jobs. And I do wonder, just across every profession, like, what is that entry-level job?
Well, I think what it's going to do is it's going to force firms to reimagine that staff training level model. The way that we've onboarded and trained staff, historically, is going to have to change to keep up with the innovation that we're seeing.
Yep.
Well, we're very excited to launch this. Applications close on September 15th, pun intended. We really are looking forward to seeing what you young students build. I think it's going to be incredibly creative and hopefully inspire some of the more senior leaders in the profession. So you can learn more and apply at ainativeaccounting.org. All right, to wrap, I always do rapid fire questions. So these are to both of you. And I like to kind of see more on your personal side, not just business, but what's the best AI tool that you use personally?
For me, for what use case? But in marketing and writing, I actually do like ChatGPT more. However, for prototyping dashboards, and there's nothing that beats Claude. So those are my 2 go-tos.
I had to come up with I actually saw this question ahead of time, and I knew if I didn't speak first, the first person would say Claude. So I'll throw one out that I don't hear about as much, which is Notebook LM, which is a Google product. And what it does is it only answers based on the information that you give it. Doesn't completely negate the ability for hallucinations, but it does minimize it. And so I use that a lot. I set up little folders for different topics and feed sources into that, and then I can ask questions just about those particular documents, which is fantastic.
Yeah, and then Mike Anderson from Armanino taught us a trick, right, which is like the field in Claude where you give it general instructions, absolutely use it, give it guardrails, give it parameters so that it reduces hallucination as well. And then also for me, it's a challenge of keeping the personal use cases separate from the business use cases. Because my husband, who's a radiologist, we share everything, like 1Password and whatnot. He just sneaks up in my, Claude, and it really confuses Claude because I was like, write me a bio. And they're like, you are a radiologist who, I'm like, no, I'm not. So just switching in and out of that has become, something I watch out for.
Well, I'll just share, I'm addicted in personal searches with Perplexity. It's kind of replaced Google for me.
Absolutely.
And my dear friend Misty Mejia is here with me today, and we did a winery road trip in Napa, and we used that to map out where we're going to be the best winery. So thank you, Perplexity.
Well, so I've got to admit, my kids got me a pillow and probably because it was the only thing they could find, but it said, "Did you grok it?" Is actually on the pillow. So
oh my gosh, meaning the Tesla Grok. Yeah, we have a Tesla. I don't know how to say goodbye to it. It won't go away. I'm like, please stop talking. Hello. It's like, no.
Off. What's a job title that exists today but will not exist in 5 years?
It speaks to the evolution of the profession. Specialization is a lot more important. And so I think you'll see as the technology grows, the generalist will not will not be, you'll have maybe 2 or 3 or 4 different people reporting to a COO.
Yeah, for me, lawyers, it's the impact of LLMs to law firms, especially junior associates and paralegals, has been just astounding. And I think, that's a profession that is still going to need to figure it out.
So that just, now I have a follow-up. Okay, so would you tell your children to go to law school?
This is even before AI, I'm like, do not. But no one listens. They always do still go. However, I do think that it's not just the jobs that are disappearing, it's the jobs that are being created. So regulating AI is going to be a huge field, right? So like we just heard that Fable, is receiving pushback from regulators. So people can't even use it without like just a pause in regulation. But innovation runs so ahead of regulation that, I think more regulators could be deployed to think through these issues.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both, Bebe. Thank you for your continued partnership. I'm having a blast building this foundation with you. And Barry, thank you so much for all of your time and service on the Advisory Council. I know we're moving fast and we're doing a lot, but appreciate your stewardship and also you showing us that responsible AI can happen at firms of all sizes. So thank you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for everything you're doing. And it just underscores you don't have to be a top 20 firm to do this. You can be a sole practitioner or anywhere in between.
Thank you to our audience for tuning in. You can stream all of our podcasts on YouTube as well as your favorite podcast platform. If you would like to learn more about becoming an AI native firm, please visit digits.com. They are our founding sponsor. I'd also like to thank all of our award sponsors who really not just support our broader foundation mission, but also support these awards, which are about recognizing responsible AI adoption in the profession. So thank you for tuning in. Until next time, stay curious to stay ahead.